Welcome to the Fire Away Podcast. Podcast that is the Fire Away Podcast. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's do it.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fire Away. I'm Mark here with Fred. What's going on, Fred?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Don't forget, check us out on Instagram, Fire_Away Podcast. You can hear all episodes now on Apple Podcast and on Spotify.
Yep.
All right, I'm working on something else, but we'll bring that up in another episode. So,
sounds good.
How's it going, man?
It's going good, buddy.
We're back.
Yes, we are. We're back
for another episode.
Loud and proud. We're in rock and roll here.
We're going to have to do a 1-year anniversary show really soon.
It's coming up.
Yep, it's coming
up. We got to figure out what that's going to look like.
Yeah, we got to bring Anna back. I feel like we got to bring Anna back, but we'll talk about it. We'll figure out what we can do. Speaking of Anna, she's going to be in here as our guest host for this week's episode. She's going to be bringing in her special guest that she wanted to get set up.
Yeah.
So we'll let her talk a little bit about that when she comes in.
For sure.
Yep, Anna will be the guest host on this episode today that you guys are going to be listening to. So
stay tuned. She's been chomping at the bit anyway. She loves it.
Yeah, man. She wants to get back behind the mic.
She may pretend she doesn't care, but she cares. She likes to be on it. Yeah, no, this young lady that she's bringing on, I know that she's had a long-time relationship with Fireline. Can't wait to hear about what that relationship's all about, where she's at in her career, what's going on, and her interaction with Fireline.
Nice. So what do you think, Fred? I mean, we're coming up on a year.
Yeah.
And then when this comes out, we might be at a year, but still, the fact that it's been a year of podcasts already, we're releasing them every other week, so we're in 25, 26 episodes. That's a year's worth.
Yeah, I was looking at the episode today because I wanted to listen to. I haven't listened to the one that popped out on Monday yet, so I wanted to listen to it come down the car, and I'm like, man, 20, 21.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy moly! So
they're getting up there quick.
Yeah, I think we just finished up 21, right? So, we just played 22, 21 or 22, Kelly. What was
that? Last episode was episode 22.
22, yeah, 22. So
we do have some things coming down the pipe.
We do.
We're working on some upgraded audio equipment.
Yes.
We're going to get some
upgraded
audio equipment, which is going to also allow us to bring on more guests at once.
Yes.
So, we're looking to have maybe a group of technicians in here that work together to talk to us about, themselves, whatever we want to talk about.
Right.
Well, we can have a bigger show with more guests and hopefully increase the audience, So we're working on that now.
Yeah, a little more roundtable style conversations, and
that'll be coming. Yeah, later in 24, we'll have that up and running, and I'm excited for that. So we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to get better. We got some new audio recording equipment I'm looking at right now. We got a new program that Kelly's got up and running. It's fancy.
It looked different when I was looking at it when he pulled it up, man.
Kelly's making a face, so he's not crazy about it yet.
No. Well, let's see. I tell you what, if anybody can get it rolling right, it's Kelly.
Yeah,
I got faith in that guy.
He hasn't thrown his laptop in a couple weeks, so we're pretty good with it.
Well, Mike appreciates that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So Rack's usually in here to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, believe it or not, the podcast doesn't cost us money. Only when he throws his computer.
It's the only time we lose money is when Kelly throws his laptop.
But no, we're doing good. So no, I'm excited. I'm excited for what 2024 is going to bring this next year. It's been fun. It's been a learning experience. It's been a learning curve. We've done a lot of things here. I would like to think we've gotten better.
I think
more comfortable on the mic. I think we're a little more fluid, but only those listeners out there can tell us. So please give us some feedback. Send us something. See us let us know what's going on, man. Let us know what you think.
And also don't care. I think we're great. No, I agree. I think we've got. I think when we listen back to the first couple episodes. We've gotten more clear. We fixed some audio issues. We're going to continue to improve on that as the show grows and continues to grow. And content might shift a little bit if we can get some bigger groups in here.
Yeah.
We're looking to just make this fun, right? This was a project that I feel like has been successful year one.
I think so too. I can't say it's not. It's funny you're talking about how more fluid we kind of are talking. And just a quick story. So I have a gentleman his daughter's on my travel softball team, and he went up to he's a sales type, but kind of Mr. Fix-It-All type for the company. He does all printers and different type printers for big company printers, small company printers anyway. So he had to go up and give a presentation, and for possibly getting into a new role, and they had to give a speech, and they had to count. And his wife was telling me when he was up there, she was giggling because when he got finished. He only said They told him 63 times, but the other guy did it 107.
Yep.
So I'm like, yeah, is something.
So I will tell you, I was just at a conference that I can't talk about, right? No names, bro. And
names.
Two of the biggest questions I got when I was there was, how's that podcast work? And who's the guy that dresses up like Fireline Jack? They were the two questions that everybody asked me when I was there. So it's getting popular, man.
Did you push it to them guys up there? All of them.
All of them. We talked about it.
Did you happen? What I want to know is, did you talk to Silco and ask them? Did they spread that around? Who's listening to Dave?
Listen, I won't call him out on this, but I was told from Shane himself he has not listened, but he will listen.
Okay.
Shane was the only one who had fessed up. Allie from Firefighter did say she would love to be a guest. So shout out to Allie. We'll have to get that scheduled.
Oh, easy, yeah.
Yep. So Firefighters out of Pittsburgh. So we'll get that set up with them. But it was very popular. People were very interested in how this works out. And I tried to, when we were at dinner, I was trying to explain to them that it's, I can't say it's not that hard because I don't do any of the work. Kelly does it all.
Yeah.
They just got to get a Kelly, and it'll be good. It's easy.
We can run them out.
We can run Kelly out, shoot him up to Pittsburgh, or wherever the country. He's just going to be
cool. That'd be fun. So I mean, it'd be awesome to get him on. So.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, you want to go ahead and bring Anna in here, and we'll get her set up and ready to go?
Anna and her guest.
Absolutely.
Guys, look, you stay tuned for a good podcast there.
Yep. Thanks, Fred.
See you, buddy.
All right, everybody. I want to thank you all for joining. I know Mark gave us a nice introduction, and we are here today with Christa Poss from Midwest Fire Alarm. She is, or Midwest Alarms, right? Midwest Alarms?
Services.
Oh, Midwest Alarm Services. And Christa is a longtime friend of mine. We have known each other for well over a decade now at this point. And she has come from a long history in the manufacturing side of things, having worked for Honeywell, is with Notifier and System Sensor and some other product lines in there. And we're going to have her talk about that today. So she is somebody from our industry who absolutely understands the life of the manufacturer, but she also is now recently moved over to the distributor side and is one of us and joining us in this world of being a local distributor for fire protection products. And so I thought it'd be an interesting kind of conversation to have today with Christa to kind of learn about what it's like to be somebody who has that manufacturer experience, because we're all very curious about it from this side, right? We all are like, what's going on at Honeywell? And what's it like being over there? And also we're really interested in it because Christa and I have been, women in an industry that is predominantly male and have seen some things. We have seen some things over the years. And so I wanted to kind of talk to her about that as well and that experience. So welcome, Christa.
Thank you, Anna.
So I want to kind of start with how we met. When did we meet?
At a conference.
It was
a Notifier conference many years ago.
I think it was 2011, I want to say.
That sounds right.
Were you pregnant at the time?
Could have been.
With Abby?
Yes. Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So nothing more fun than being pregnant at a conference.
Yes. Uh-huh. No drinking.
Right. And no drinking and a lot of people touching the belly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I think we met and I think we hit it off real close, real quickly. Right.
We did.
I just, Christa's one of those people you have those connections with that you meet. And,
we were fast friends.
Fast friends.
Yes,
exactly.
we were.
And so we have then since seen each other at many, many, many conferences over the years, talked to each other outside of work, and I've kind of gone a long way back. We've seen some things, we've gone and done some things we might not talk about in this podcast. I think, we're going to have to avoid certain topics, I'm sure. But no, we've had a good go.
We have.
So when I met you, I was really new into taking on my role. I had just kind of taken over the company, total deer in headlights. You were like a seasoned pro by then. So when did you start in the industry?
2001. It was my second job out of college.
So what was your first job that you were doing when you were in the industry?
In the industry, I was an associate product planner, super junior, at System Sensor.
It was like, and I recall you were like, you and Dave, our buddy Dave, were sitting like back-to-back cubicles.
Yes.
And you would come in and you were like planning your wedding.
We shared a cubicle.
Yeah.
I was, knee deep into wedding planning, which he hated listening to all of that. And he would eat carrots.
I knew that story. Yeah. I'd sit there and always eat his carrots.
But we were entry level marketing people. So we helped the product managers So that we're like writing installation manuals, launching products, like grunt work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the really tedious stuff.
Yes.
And so from there, how did you kind of grow and build your career in terms of Honeywell? Because you were at Honeywell for how long?
23 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a long time.
Yeah. So I was in product management for a long time. So I worked on smoke detectors, the AV stuff, and then I moved into the fast business, which was my favorite. So that was a fun time, but also I really had a lot to learn. So we were manufacturing then. I was working closely with engineers. It was very technical for my experience.
And when I met you, that was when Fast was getting kicked off, right? And,
Yes.
And Fast, for those of you who don't
Yes.
know, was kind of a competitor to Vesda,
Yes.
right? Which is the bread and butter of the air sampling systems out there.
Yep.
And Fast was Honeywell's version that they were coming with. This is before
Yes.
Honeywell purchased Vesda.
Correct. Yeah. So that was a fun time because we were, it was kind of a little startup within Honeywell. So we had a lot of fun, but it was really challenging. And I had just had my third child. So when I came back from maternity leave, that was my new job, was being the leader of the FAST group.
And I remember you came here and presented a couple times
Yes.
and did technical presentations and
Yeah.
really you knew that product inside and out.
We were creating our own space and brand and trying to get out and build awareness. So yeah, we traveled all over the country meeting with our distributors.
The product itself was eventually didn't really kind of finally take off as well.
Yeah.
Because then Honeywell just said, "Oh, screw it, we're just going to buy our competitor," and they brought in Vesda. But you were that really kind of helped launch your career too, because it got you very good exposure, I think, to a lot of
Yes.
people in the industry because you were like the public figurehead of that product, right?
Right.
Everybody knew Christa was the fast lady.
I was the fast lady. Yeah. And we had a great team. We had great sales team, engineering, sales engineers. That's where I met Nick Gomez, who I
Now
still
work
work with now at Midwest. So it was, we were having fun. Like we were saying, these are the good old days. Like we're going to look back and say that was the fun time. And we had a great time and, did a lot of work while we were having fun, but it was a good time to be at Honeywell and exciting.
And then now I want to be also respectful of the fact that we joked before we got on this podcast. We're not trying to burn any bridges here. There's still a lot of good people at Honeywell that you still respect. You recently left Honeywell because you left in January to go to Midwest. And part of that was a culture decision because the culture of Honeywell has changed aggressively over the past several years. Really, since that time at Fast, I think things started evolving and changing. That's when I think the kind of corporate world got a little bit more involved. So you moved from Fast. What did you do after Fast?
After Fast is when System Sensor combined with the Fire brands.
That's right.
So I went into customer channel marketing. And so I was leading a team of people who were supporting the channels across all the brands. And then we merged with security. So we were Fire and security. So that when I was kind of preparing for the podcast, I was thinking about challenging times. And I would say that was challenging because we were Fire people trying to learn security, and they were security people trying to learn Fire.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. We did that for 2 years.
That was the kind of beginning of things getting sticky, I think, at Honeywell. And so for those listening, we all know like Honeywell's been going through a lot of, like every other corporate company, a lot of changes and challenges since COVID.
A lot of change.
But for those of you who work with the Notifier product, you will know like customer service has been a little challenging, tech support. I'm being really nice here. And there's been a lot of frustrations that have been happening over the past several years. And so Christa was having to like live through a lot of that. And I remember you went then into, you said, I'm going to take a step back, right? Is that when you kind of said, I'm going to go into a sales account manager or?
After several years in there.
Yeah.
Yes. So the job came to, it was going to be a global position. And at that time I had little kids, twins, and Abby, who was even younger, and that just was not possible for me to travel globally. So the opportunity came up to become a regional sales manager in Illinois and Wisconsin, and I applied for it, and I got the job. So,
yeah, and to preface, in case you can't tell from Christa's accent, she is definitely from the Midwest. We like to say she's like a good old cornbread girl,
corn-fed.
Corn-fed. Oh, God, I can't even get it right. But you're in Chicago. You're based out of Chicago, right?
Yes.
So that area worked for you because it was not nearly as much travel.
Right. So after 16 or 17 years in marketing, I moved over to sales.
And that lasted for about a hot second because you were so amazing at it. They had to promote you. I'm gonna toot your horn for you because I remember this story from your boss, Dick Bauer, who we both adore. And he at the time was like, you have too much value to be just an account manager. You just need to be and then you moved up to what? It was like, I think the sales director.
Yeah. But I loved being a regional sales manager because I owned that territory. I had really good relationships with my customers. It got me back to being close to our customers, which I felt like I lost some of while I was in marketing. So I loved that year and a half. I really did.
And then they sucked you back into the higher level corporate world.
And then but I still I traveled with my team. Yeah. I was still involved with the customers on a daily basis. So that was a fun part as well.
That's good.
I liked it. Yeah.
I remember you did it and you liked it. I think the decision to make the change it was time. I think there's been a lot of shifting of leadership at Honeywell. And I think that was one of the challenges that we've seen is lack of tenure. So for, Fireline employees, you've seen the same leaders for decades at a time for some of you. And the head leadership change is very slow and not too frequent. When you're in corporate worlds like Honeywell, UTC, all these other places, their VP of whatever is changing every 18 months, less than that sometimes. And so each new person coming in has a different direction. And so that different direction makes it difficult for you to know what's going on. And I think that's what was starting to happen more frequently when you were getting into your leadership.
And when I would interview people, I would say, how much do you like change? You got to like change to work here. I mean, really, you had to embrace it. Like if there were people who did not like change, I would say, I don't think this is the place for you, just because you had to get used to it and embrace it, actually. Yeah. But for me, it was kind of being okay with my plan changing and pivoting. And I'm so glad that I did, but it was a scary decision.
No, we were so right before we did this podcast, we were upstairs with a bunch of the ladies from Fireline and we were doing like a women's empowerment kind of speaker series that Christa and I have been a part of. And one of the big things you were talking about was that fear of change and that fear of moving into different roles and different departments because you're like, I like my comfort zone.
I do.
Right. And what helped you to kind of make those kind of changes every time you had to move in that career? Because you really did move. People would pull you in places.
And I am thankful for those people. Yeah. I had really amazing leaders and bosses who would say, I want you to come and do this. And I'd say, I don't know. I'm really comfortable here. And hearing myself say that, I knew I had to do the new thing. But I mean, calling people like you, calling my friends in the industry and saying, I'm thinking of doing this. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
And just getting that affirmation that, no, you're not crazy. I think you'd be good at that. It's a totally different world. And it's been fun. Like, I love the change now, but you have to take a big leap to do it sometimes.
Yeah, the first time. Yeah. I think because you were in product for a long time.
I was in product for a long time. Yeah. Yes.
It's a big change.
It is a big change.
What did you like working for the manufacturer side? What did you like working about then? Like, we as distributors we like to poo on the manufacturers a lot, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of sometimes the frustration, right? We can't get this product, we can't get this part, and it makes it difficult for us to operate our businesses. Oh, they're giving us 3 price increases in a single year.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot more of that kind of corporate world when we're very like do it with a handshake kind of. So, we like to down on them, but there's obviously some things that are good. What were some of the things other than, like you said, you liked working for the Fast and being part of that kind of like startup group in product development, but
I liked seeing the whole picture, like all of our customers and how, all the distributors made it all tick. Like you guys were such a big part of the business. And I really liked that model. And then coming out with new products or services or programs that supported our customers. Like that's the part that I really liked. I really liked going in the field, doing the voice of the customer, taking that feedback and then making things happen.
Yeah. I remember doing VOCs with
you.
Yeah. VOCs were voice of the customer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what made the whole business run and be successful. And that's the part that I really, really loved is that whole network that we got to work with.
Now I'm going to ask you the harder question. What was the part that you didn't like?
The red tape.
She's looking so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
like, how much do I want to make this comment?
Yeah, it's harder to make change as it gets bigger and, a lot of things. I was having a hard time sitting on that side of the table and saying some of the changes we were making, like that was getting harder to do.
Yeah.
And being on the other side, like how much more quickly things happen being an integrator and making decisions and just, having the authority to do that is very different.
Now you moved over to the distributor side, the good side. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what's the difference that you see? Like, what are some things that you kind of like about being on this side? What did you notice the biggest difference?
I feel like you're much closer to the action, right? You are closer to what's happening on a day-to-day basis with the customers. It moves much faster. Like everything is faster in a good way. Like there's no red tape waiting for approvals. You can hire people, set their salaries. It's just all on a much faster scale, which I appreciate very much. And then being really close to what's happening with the customers every day. So it's just very, very different.
It's I can imagine that you are getting to see. I mean, it's funny. You came in yesterday and we were talking about just some of the things that we're doing and how we organize departments and how we go and approach sales and whatnot. And it was even more fun to have those conversations with you because you were seeing it now from our perspective, where I think when you're in the manufacturer world, it's hard to understand how the operations work for us as distributors. Because it's so different of a model.
Yes. And there was a lot I didn't see. I never was a part of. So when I came to Midwest, I told my team, like, I don't know everything that happens here. Like, there's going to be a learning curve for me because I wasn't exposed to your whole business. I was exposed to a part of it.
Yeah.
But, so there was, I'm still learning, obviously. But there's a lot that goes on that I had no visibility to. So it's been fun. It's been a lot drinking from a fire hose. But yeah, there's just a lot more I'm exposed to now that I never was before from the manufacturer side.
So, talking about the industry too, because it is, you were coming at it from, you're looking at the fire alarms and the parts and the pieces and things that were important were like shipping and, deliveries and price points and how do we do pricing for big projects. But the fire protection world is very technical, and there's a lot of technical things that go on. And we know that there's the predominance of technical people are men in the industry. And the predominance of people who are drawn to this industry are men, and therefore there's just a lot more men in the industry. So for those of you guys who don't know, we go to a lot of these conferences, right? Whether it's the Notifier conference, we go to FSSA, which is the Fire Suppression System Association. We go to, I do NIFAD and NFPA conferences. And so these conferences are hundreds of people, if not sometimes thousands. And we are in a sea of men. There are men everywhere. And it can be a little intimidating at times. And especially when there's just a lot of technical talk, right? There's a lot of conversation about products and parts and pieces and circuits and, whether or not the latest smoke detector is going to have this feature or whatnot, right? And so we're meanwhile on more of like the customers and the sales and the people integration side of things, myself included, right? Like that's really where my thing is in the people management. That's what I love. So, we start going to these conferences. When did you go to your first conference? How old were you when you went to your
2001.
First? Oh my gosh. So you were really young. You were 23.
Yes.
You were a baby.
Yes.
And what was that experience like?
Very uncomfortable. And what we talked about earlier is not only being a woman, but being a very young woman, you stand out. People are wondering, like, what do you do here?
Like, what is your role?
What is your role?
Right.
Yes. And I am forever grateful for the men who were willing to teach me and not judge and, say you don't know all the technical things. Like, there were plenty of guys who were willing to teach me and, show me the way, but I was never going to be the most technical person in the room. And you just have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I learned my piece of it. I learned what I needed to know for my product and how it worked with the system, but I was never going to be the guru, and that was okay. Like, that's just not my strength.
And I think it's uncomfortable too, because, okay, so I want to set this up for everybody, right? People are like, oh, women in business and whatever, it's, you guys are fine. You guys have all this vintage. And I think there is an advantage to being a woman in this business. But I want you to picture, you're at a conference, because this happened to me multiple times, where it's an intimidation factor. You walk into a conference and there are 800 people there, right? It's 800 people in a big old room. And all you guys out there, I want you to picture that of that 800 people, 775 of them are women. So I mean, picture you going into a room where 775 people are women and 25 people are men. How are you going to feel in that room? You're going to feel a little bit like they're talking about things. They're talking fast. They're using lots of words. They're head nodding, and they're talking about things that I don't really have any interest in, or that I don't understand what they're talking about. And so there's an intimidation factor purely by numbers. It's not because women are better than men or men are better than women. It's just purely I'm outnumbered. Don't even get me started on race and other things too, that we also have a lack of diversity in our industry that is a problem. But the women one was big for me personally, and you personally, because we could experience that. So we'd walk into these conferences and there'd be 775 men and all 25 of us ladies. And of those 25 ladies, a lot of them were in typically sales positions usually, right?
Marketing, sales. Mm-hmm.
So like, I know for me personally, I would go into those and it is uncomfortable. Most of the time, like you said, when you're younger too, it was extra hard. So when I was 27, it was difficult, right? Because the assumption is you don't know anything, which they're not entirely wrong. I didn't know anything to a certain extent. But the first introduction they say to me is they're like, "Oh, what do you do? Are you in sales, or are you with and I was like, "No, I'm not in sales. I'm actually the owner. I'm actually president of Fireline out in Baltimore. We're a distributor in Baltimore." And they go, "Oh." What's the first question they would ask me? Every time.
Where's your husband?
Yeah, exactly. It was almost like clockwork. Every single time I said, "Oh, no, I'm president of Fireline. I run Fireline Corporation out in Baltimore." And they look at me kind of confused. And I say, "It's a family business. I took it over from my father when he passed." And they say, "Oh, so does your husband work with you?" Mm-hmm. Every single time. Mm-hmm. And every single time I had to be like, "No, I'd kill my husband if I had to work with him. We don't, we like to have our separation, right. And, I'd write it off or whatever. But every time the assumption was there's a man running the business, you are obviously just a figurehead for a women-owned business kind of certification or something. And so that became kind of a sticking point, where it was one thing if that's that question asked to me 20 minutes into the conversation, right? 10 minutes even. But when it's the first question out of the gate every single time, like clockwork, it got very frustrating because the assumption is you don't know what you're doing. So that was difficult. But then I think the other element of being at a lot of these conferences, the slightly inappropriateness. I don't know how to put this with, I'm keeping this podcast PG. But there were a lot of times when we had, I don't know how to explain it. There were conversations that shouldn't happen.
Yes.
And sometimes in places they shouldn't be. There's drinking at these conferences. So people are shooting the, at the bar, and they're having a conversation with you, and they come up and they're getting a little too cozy, a little too friendly. And then I thank all of those men that were my protectors. Did you have those too?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were they kept the eye out for this guy's getting a little too comfortable. I'm going to kind of step in and shoo them away. They were my big brothers. They were the people who kind of looked out for me in the industry. I know you kind of had a similar experience.
Yeah. And, I had same thing. If something happened, I remember one time I went and reported it to my boss. It was not an employee. It was someone in the industry. And he was very supportive and said, "You never have to go to anything that guy will be at again in the future." And I just so appreciated him having my back and supporting me, because then it gave me confidence to if anything happened in the future, which of course it did, that I knew that people would support me and not be accusatory. So it was hard.
It was hard, I think, especially when you're young. And I jokingly said to Christa before this podcast, I'm like, I think it's getting better, because I feel like I noticed more men took me more seriously as the younger generations came in, when the guys in their 30s and 40s came in, and it wasn't the guys in their 50s and 60s. And I think that they're taking me more seriously. And she's like, "No, Anna, it's just that you're getting older and you're not as young and attractive as you used to be." Which is okay.
I
won't take it
say
personally.
the attractive
it was
part.
inferred. But more so that you're a known entity and people know you now. And so you have so much more credibility behind your name. So they take you more seriously. So when they approach you, it's from a professional business angle, as opposed to how they did when you were 27. Same thing for you. You're very well known in the industry, very well known. And so you have a ton of credibility behind your name. So I'm going, "Oh, it's so much better." And she's like, "No, it's just you're just older and you have more credibility.
And I see it happening still to younger women. And I have coached some of them on, how to handle it. And actually, she handled it beautifully. She went and talked to the owner of the company and, was very upfront about what happened and how that should not happen again. So unfortunately, it's still out there.
And it's hard too, because you want to try and save face and you're trying to be nice, especially you where it was customers sometimes.
Right.
But we would have, examples were like, obviously, like I said, there were hands in places they shouldn't be. There were people who said, derogatory or sometimes cruel things. There were times when people would, hotel keys would be passed, you were like, that's not appropriate. One time we were in a really high-end, like a nice hotel. I think this was an FSSA. And we were in a nice hotel. It was somewhere in Florida, I think. And we were all at the hotel lobby, and it was like 11 o'clock. And I was like, okay, guys, I'm kicked for the night. I'm going up. And we were talking to a big group of people. And so I started walking towards the elevator, and this guy followed me to the elevator. And I said, oh, what floor do you want? And we had been talking. He'd been in the group. I said, what floor do you want? He said, oh, same as yours, because I'd already hit my button. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I'm riding up the elevator, thinking it's fine. Get off the elevator. I start walking. He starts walking too. He's following right behind me. And followed me all the way to my room and stopped. And I was like, I'm sorry, can I help you? And I was like, are you on this floor? He's like, no, I just wanted to make sure you got up here safely. And I went, in this 5-star hotel from the elevator lobby to my room, you were worried I was going to get mugged or, I don't feel safe from you now, right? And I was like, oh, I'm fine. Okay, bye. And like tried to squeeze my way through the door as fast as I could and kind of slammed it in his face. That was really uncomfortable. I've had, guys that would have a little too much to drink and they would kind of box you into spaces, right, that were very uncomfortable. And so, these younger women are kind of still seeing this. It's still happening occasionally.
And I used to make the mistake that it was my friendliness. I was too nice. I was too friendly. And you have to tell yourself being friendly does not invite people to do that. So I think you have to know that you can act like you and you can act like a woman and be friendly, and it's still not okay to act like that.
Yeah.
And when we've done some of these women's groups at forums and, sharing these experiences with other women, I think it's helpful to know that it's not you, it's not your behavior, it's their behavior.
Right.
You don't invite that.
Yeah. And I do think that there are improvements happening with generations and it's getting a lot better and it's become better. I do know it still happens. Obviously, you're telling me it still happens and it's not always great. But there's also other things that happen too with being a woman in the industry, which is really comes to the credibility piece and whether or not you were there. So what are some ways that you kind of overcame some of that in the early years?
Asking for help. If I did, I told the women earlier, I always had people I could call and ask my dumb questions to. Faking it till you make it. So I would listen to people. I would go to the same presentation 5 times so that I could give that presentation. And then I actually did know it. And when you know the material, you can talk about it so confidently, but it's getting outside of your comfort zone, which I was not good at, but just really kind of diving in, asking the dumb questions, admitting there are things you don't know and being okay with that. Because I felt like I came in and there was a lot of assumptions that I knew all these acronyms and just what all this stuff meant, and I didn't.
And you're not alone there. I feel like there's plenty of men out there too that I'm like, I can see it in some guys' faces. I'll throw some terms around sometimes, and I can tell they're like,
"There's a huge
what
learning
are you talking
curve.
About?" It's not just women. I think it's when we're young, right?
Huge
I think being
learning
young
curve.
is almost harder than being a woman.
Yes, I agree.
I do feel like being a woman in this industry is an advantage to a certain extent.
Well, you stand out. So I'll go to things and everyone knows who you are because you're, one of 10 women. So you stand out, you're more memorable. People remember meeting you and interacting with you. And, that does help.
I jokingly say to people that I'm like, I go to these conferences and I'm so bad with names. And it's really hard when it's all men too. And they're all named like Bob, Steve, John,
and they
Joe.
wear a polo and jeans.
And they're all wearing polos and jeans. And so they all look it's a little lemming-ish. And I'm like, okay, well, your name's either going to be like Steve or John or Matt. There's a lot of those out there, and so I'm like, I don't remember this person. And they're all like, Anna, hi. Yes. And I'm like, hi.
Hey, guy.
Hey, guy. I recognize your face, kind of. So yeah, that is tough it's great though. I mean, it does give you an advantage, right? Because like you said, you stand out. And so what happens? You get asked to do things, right? I think we were talking about this upstairs earlier. You get asked to be the token female on boards or committees or whatever it is. Oh, look at us. We have a lady in the group, and they always have to make a comment when you come in. Oh, that's like the lady. It's like, oh. But it was great because then now I've got a committee that I know more people on. I'm building my network out. I'm getting more intel in what's going on in the industry earlier.
You became very connected through that
quickly.
process.
Those committees really built my network for me. And it was because I was asked to join and I said yes. And I told the ladies upstairs, like, don't be afraid to say yes. I was terrified. I thought I knew nothing. I thought we're sitting on this conference and I'm not going to know any of what they're talking about. And it turned out that I was able to bring value. It was just not how they might bring value. We all had different things to offer. And I think saying yes to those committees. And I knew I was the token female at first, but then after a while I wasn't. Right. And
absolutely.
I think you're so well known in the industry now at this point. I mean, people are always like, where's Christa? Is Christa coming? Is she coming to this meeting? I think that was the biggest hit to the industry was when you moved to Midwest. People were like, does that mean Krista's not going to come to things anymore? Because everybody likes Christa.
And I miss that side of it.
Yeah.
I do miss the people because this is more narrow now, right? Like I miss the broader group of people and distributors.
National. Yeah. Because you were
do.
exposed nationally.
I miss that for sure.
What are some things that you're kind of proud of that you've accomplished over your career here?
Looking back on it, like I have been able to roll with a lot of change and embraced it. And that was the advice that I gave to my team too. Like if you can embrace change and take on new responsibilities and the new initiatives, like you will be awesome here. But it's like staying positive through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like I made a major change from marketing to sales kind of in the middle of my career. And I would not have changed that for the world. Like, I don't think I could have gone back. Like, I realized maybe that's where I should have been all along.
Yeah.
So now when I'm talking to people like my daughter, 16, my nieces in college, like, you should really look at sales as a career because it's, it's if you like being in the action and with the customers and interacting with people, like people is where I have my strength. Like, I love managing a team and helping people with their career progression. And I was doing that with my customers too. So I felt like that a lot of people looked at me like, you went to being an individual contributor, you took a step down, and I didn't. I took a step over.
Mm-hmm. Jungle gym, not a ladder.
Yeah. And I was proud of doing that and being okay with it at that time. And it was refreshing. I loved not having team meetings from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
What? You don't want to be on a Teams conference call for 8 hours a day?
Couldn't do it anymore.
No? Mm-hmm. I will say, I see that too in our organization at Fireline is I would say, I think the people whose careers move the most are the ones that embrace the change, even when it's uncomfortable. So I've got Mark sitting in this room here and I'm looking at Mark over here. Mark, I can see you being the person that would really like, to stay where you're comfortable and that sort of thing, but you've embraced change and you took opportunity and your career has grown. And I think that nobody likes change, right? We all have some kind of resistance to it. But being that person who's slightly more open-minded to it, even when it's uncomfortable, I think as long as the change has good purpose, right? I think if you can't get behind the concept behind the change, that's when it's really a little bit more difficult. But I agree with that. That's really true. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's exciting. Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this. Let me get readjusted here. So Christa of today, this is the question we ask at all of our podcasts. Okay. The Christa of today had advice to give the Christa of 2001 when she first came in the industry. Yeah. What is that advice that you would give?
To have more confidence. So when I was just starting to think about leading a team and taking on a business at System Sensor, we had 360s at the time. So my peers got to review me. And there's an option for them to write comments. And a lot of them said, Christa can do the next job. She can take the next position, but she needs to know that she can do that. And it was kind of eye-opening. I did not have the confidence in myself And after reading those assessments of me, it really changed my thinking, that I could have had a lot more capacity to do more, but I had to get out of my comfort zone and take a chance at doing it.
Yeah.
So I would say to people, especially younger people, it's hard to have that confidence, but do it, because it will lead you in so many more directions, but you have to kind of advocate for yourself. And know that you can do more than you probably think you're capable of.
We talked about this a lot in the women's forums that we've done together, which is we're big advocates of the Sheryl Sandberg book, Lean In. And
yes.
Please go read it. Changed my life. But the concept is that women have a tendency to undermine their own abilities. So unless they're 100% qualified for a job, they will not apply for it. Whereas men are, if they're 60%.
60%.
If they're 60% qualified, they feel comfortable applying for a job. And it's not that men are wrong. Men are right there. It's women should be lowering their perfection needs to be able to go try something new. We should be saying it's okay to only be 60 or 70 or 80% qualified before we apply for something and push ourselves to do something we shouldn't. Frankly, we should all think about pushing ourselves beyond, because you don't know what you're capable of until you try it. And if you fail, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You just go back and go, you know what? That wasn't for me.
It's not forever. Yeah.
We've seen that here. I think we've seen a couple of people who, they try maybe it's a leadership role or supervisor role, and they're like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with the people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of what supervising is. So, and they're like, I want to go back to working with the product and the customers. And it was like, that was okay.
Absolutely.
And it was like, good. You were great at that. That's fine. So yeah, I think taking that extra step beyond your comfort zone is important. And you had a lot of people that pulled you out of that too.
I had a lot of people.
Had a lot of people.
Yeah, I
people
had really
advocated for you.
Great people. And the story I always love to tell is when I was leaving for maternity leave for 12 weeks. And my boss said, I want you to take this new position leading the FAST team. It was our brand new business division. And I said, oh no, I can't do that. I'm going to be on maternity leave. I'm going to miss all this time. And he was like, no, I want you to do it. You are the most qualified to do that. And I appreciated that. And it's Jeff Klein.
Yeah.
I tell him that story, and I told him that I share that with other
Jeff Klein,
people.
who now runs Potter.
Yeah. That
Great
gave
guy.
me so much confidence that I could do it, and I could have a baby and go on maternity leave and come back and take that job. But he believed in me and gave me the opportunity.
So I think the lesson here too is if you are in positions of power, to then pay that forward and believe in other people as well.
100%.
Right? So it's not just accepting that kind of generosity, but it's also giving it as well.
It kind of shaped who I am as a manager of people now. I want to give people opportunities and, believe that they can do more, let them be creative. A lot of what all of my managers did for me, I am definitely trying to pay that forward.
That's a good lesson to walk away with.
Yeah. Thanks.
On that note, I'm going to wrap us up. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I know
for
that you're
having me. This was fun.
not feeling the podcast. She was like, oh, I'm really nervous. This is nerve-wracking, but it's not so bad.
No,
it's not so bad.
No, thank you.
I want to say first off, more than anything, thank you for your friendship, because you have been one of the most. I mean, you guys know I like to pretend I know what I'm doing most of the time, but behind the scenes, I have a lot of challenges that I face and questions in my mind at times. And Christa has been one of my best sounding boards over the past 13 years at this point. So thank you for what you've given me. And thank you guys. And that's a wrap. Thank you for being part of the podcast, and we will see you next time.